Seems like
Oh,
we're live.
we are?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone online on YouTube. It's Katie Walsh. I'm moderating the talk with Dan tonight about Kill Show. Has everybody? No one's read it. Okay. Everyone just bought it. Okay, so the first question I wanted to ask, can I hold this
Yes,
for a second,
please.
is the thing that struck me first was a true crime novel. Which is sort of an oxymoron.
Yes.
And I am curious, like, how that sort of turn of phrase
There have
came
been
to you.
100 emails about this subtitle,
Okay.
maybe even more, and a lot of angst about it. And this was something that ultimately the publisher picked a true crime novel. They really wanted to advertise this book to fans of true crime, but they also wanted to make it super clear that it was a novel and it was fictional.
Okay.
I'm not sure this phrase succeeds in doing that because I have people come up to me and say, what does this mean? Is it actually fictional? I have people who start reading the book and saying they're Googling the events, saying, did this really happen? My original subtitle was Kill Show, and it was a novel, a book about blah, blah, blah. And it was just super long. And it turned out that was really useful for the sales part of the life of this book, just to get people aware of what the book was talking about. But you don't want to put like a 50-word subtitle on the cover of a book.
Right.
So we came up with a lot of bad ideas. I had most of the bad ideas. And when a true crime novel was settled on, I was like, not sure anyone knows what that means, but it's intriguing.
But you can
project.
It.
You can project your own wishes into it.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's go with that. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of playful, which is what I would like about it. And I think Kill Show is also kind of a playful title because, obviously it's referring to, a true crime show, a murder show. But yeah, there's like a certain, even though this is about a serious topic, it's like, there's a twisting of the phrasing, which I think is
and look, I thought this was a playful title also, but again, dealing with the publisher, the editor, they were a little concerned that it implied the book was very grisly and that there were people being murdered left and right, which is not the case. And that was a fair...
like trying to tell them to come in.
That was a fair concern. And I've seen a few people online say, oh, this book sounds too violent for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, we should have been nervous about that. But the irony is they had that concern and then they pitched a cover with blood red lettering that covers the entire thing. So I guess the publishing world is a little over my pay grade, is what I've learned.
Yeah. So also this book is an oral history. It's an oral history about a true crime show. And it's sort of like 10 years after the events have passed, right? About 10 years.
What I was always calling it's a fake oral history.
Right.
And those three words are relatively easy to understand in isolation, fake oral history. But when you put them together, people are confused, and rightfully so, because that doesn't really exist. So I would say I'm writing a fake oral history. My friends would go, what? And that just really came out of my obsession with reading normal oral histories. Sometimes they're about something super serious, the Great Depression. Sometimes they're about fun stuff, the making of Days to Confused. And it's just like the 1996 draft, it can be something super simple. And they're so easy to read, and you get access to people's like interior experiences so closely. And that was just a genre that I loved until I read Daisy Jones and the Six. Everyone's here read that? So that isn't a fake oral history, the first one I had experienced. I go, oh my God, I am reading a novel with the same sense of intimacy as I've read all of these real oral histories. This is brilliant. I want to do this. What is a genre that is ripe to do this that's not a rock band retrospective? And very early on, it was so obvious that looking back at a crime 10 years in the past, in something that was traumatic and dramatic for many different parties, was like the perfect setup to create 26 different points of view to reflect back on that. So once I kind of combined oral history, true crime retrospective, I was like, this is going to work.
Yeah. It's brilliant when you think about applying this kind, because in Daisy Jones it seems obvious because there are so many behind the music rock oral history type, or like oral history of SNL or something. It really makes sense for that, but for this it's like, it's kind of different. it's a twist on. You wouldn't expect it to be
Right.
a combining.
No,
those
I
two.
like to claim that I've done the first crime fake oral history. In hindsight, I think I've now discovered other people have dabbled in this. I think the other versions of this are what are called like found footage or found media stories, where like Blair Witch is the classic documentary, but there's totally fictional novels that are just accumulating people's emails and text messages and putting it
epistolary
all.
novels. Yeah,
There you go. That is the technical phrase that I was looking for. So yes, I did not invent that form.
But that's like letters, written words, written materials.
Nowadays, there's more than letters, and I think that term gets applied to text messages and
emails.
Right.
Okay. Did you find in writing a fake oral history that there was a certain amount of freedom in your storytelling or in your prose, or were there certain limitations, like anything that you were like, oh, I wish I am challenged by this in a certain way?
I feel like I'm giving away a trade secret, but I want everyone to know it. It was an absolute blast and easier than anything I'd ever written in terms of books.
Really?
I'd written some normal prose third-person narrative novels before, and this was so liberating to be able to get inside of so many people's heads without having to like kind of weasel my way into them, or like to reveal their thoughts just literally from their mouth without having to do it with other people assuming or projecting. And I got to do it for so many different people. And then the real benefit of this format for me was when I was done with the first draft, and it was imperfect, much to my chagrin, and various people told me it was imperfect. The editing process with this format was so easy because you could just go into the chapters and go, I need someone to be challenged right here. Let me grab this voice, throw him in. I need a joke to come in here. Let me grab this funny character, throw a paragraph right here. And in a normal novel, you can't really grab characters from different parts of the world or parts of that world. Why were they in the room at that moment? Why would they even have an opinion on this subject matter? But with this, I had kind of given myself license. I hope this analogy makes sense, but if you're familiar with the CRISPR technology of like gene editing, of just like copying, pasting little DNA snippets and moving them around so that the outcome changes, I felt like I was snipping little sections and moving them around so where they actually worked. And that was so much easier than previous rewrites I had done.
One of the things that I love also in the novel is like the way you breadcrumb pieces of the mystery, where it starts on the first page with the, like, when you're introducing all the characters.
Yeah, the list of characters.
There's little breadcrumbs like of where people are, or the certain clues, and then also throughout you'll have characters say, oh well, this person is here or there. I don't want to say what's going on, but like, and it really added to the sense of the page turnerness. Like you're like, wait, they keep talking about this thing and I have to find out like why or how this happened.
I so appreciate you mentioning that, because that list of characters on pre-page one, whatever you want to call it, I spent so much time thinking about exactly how I wanted to leave a few breadcrumbs there. I've since discovered that half the people don't look at it, because most people, when they get a normal book, turn to chapter one.
Right.
And they think this is a normal book, so they go to chapter one. I've also discovered that half the people who do look at it don't even detect the breadcrumbs. But I know that there are astute readers who are seeing on that page that there's a lot of foreshadowing. And to your main question, which is how did I kind of modulate all of that? That was a real challenge where I felt lost because I couldn't really check in with anyone as you're writing chapter 3 of like, is this too much foreshadowing, or am I giving too much, not enough away that no one's going to want to read chapter 4? You really have to wait till the book's entirely written and get someone's like full picture of it to get a real opinion. So that was just like trusting my gut, and my gut was telling me the more breadcrumbs you put in here, the more people want to turn the page. And the risk might be someone might sniff something out relatively early, but I would rather that happen and them feel validated rather than people disengage because they have no sense of kind of anticipation about what's happening.
Of the momentum of the story. You also have the main cast of characters who are commenting on this crime and also this crime show, which is happening at the same time that the crime is that the search
Right.
for
There's
the
a
girls,
docu-series depicting,
but it's like happening in real time.
right.
Yeah. But you have these two other characters, a pop culture critic and a sociologist, who are outside and they're commenting on the events from a 10-year perspective. We know with the retrospect, the hindsight is 2020 kind of thing. But I really loved those characters because it was like a way to kind of like grapple with the events of what was going on and have that kind of explained to us. It also felt like a way that you were maybe coming through and commenting on what's going on and sort of shaping how we're thinking about it. But I was curious if you did any research, like sociological research, or like read criticism of true crime shows to kind of shape these voices of these characters.
Yeah, no, I could not have written this book if I didn't include those characters, because I wouldn't have enjoyed myself or felt it worthwhile. And those characters were very late to come into this idea, because for a long time I thought I had half of a good idea, which was just a normal mystery. But that is not enough to get me to work my ass off for 6 months or a year. So creating those characters to allow for some kind of commentary and social criticism was a way to get my voice into the book that was beyond just I'm driving the plot forward. And it's funny if you ask, did I have to do some research to do the commentary that they do? My initial experience was I don't need to, because they're talking about all these things that I'm interested in. I know all about it. But it turns out my knowledge of what they're talking about is an inch deep, even if it's a mile wide. So I can talk about those subjects at a dinner party or even at this event for 5 minutes, but I couldn't talk about it with authority. So that was the moment I did need to go into, oh my God, there is kind of an academic field of analyzing people's experiences with true crime, with television, addiction to social media, conspiracy theories. And those things are all fascinating to me in the sense I've read the New Yorker articles,
right?
But I did need to dive into a little more of the technical stuff just to have those voices come through with some authority that I didn't have on my own.
Do you want to read?
I'll do a passage from one of them.
Okay.
From
the sociologist.
Yeah. So this is the sociology professor commenting on, well, I'll let her speak for herself. Her name's Molly Lowe. She's from California, Berkeley.
Good school.
Yes. True crime obsession is nothing new and relatively easy to explain from a sociological perspective. We know violence is titillating. Adding the veneer of truth makes it even more so. Every true crime story carries an implication that makes it scarier than fiction. Look, this could have happened to you, but it didn't, because you're either luckier or smarter or more deserving. Congratulations. But there's another dopamine hit embedded in the best true crime. What people crave even more than a thrill is being involved, feeling a sense of belonging and purpose. Whether it's a family, fraternity, political party, any number of things, we all register significant boosts in happiness when we are part of a group. Even better, a group with a clear objective that reinforces this heady bond. And if the objective is perceived as noble, watch out. Individuals will give away their whole life to pursue that goal. Now, what's more noble than saving the life of an innocent girl? It is literally the archetypal epic story. A girl out there somewhere who needs our help. A damsel in distress. That's what Casey Hawthorne tapped into with Searching for Sarah. This was her genius. She got her viewers to believe they were joining the rescue party. That's why millions of them became obsessed with it.
You know, it's so interesting reading that, like listening to you read that again. I mean, had you finished this before the Gabby Petito TikTok?
Yes, although it's hard to keep track of how many missing people have captivated the world's attention when I started this. But this was finished, and that was when people solved her murder via like her Instagram. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, it was like all these people on TikTok, and they were location locating where they were based on TikTok and Instagram stuff. And because she had like a van life Instagram with her boyfriend, and they were basically not solve. I guess maybe they did solve it. I can't
Perhaps
even remember.
The police would have solved it on their own. Do you have?
I think they like narrowed in where the body was.
Yeah, they narrowed it.
So
Okay,
they genuinely contributed to a resolution. And that's what I think was interesting about the dynamic I set up in the book, which is all of us have probably been obsessed with a true crime series before, but sometimes it's a murder from 1930.
Right.
And we can't impact the events at all. We're living in a new moment where some of these true crime entertainment things happen in real time with all of us as participants. Bringing up the Gabby Petito fans. Is that the right word? Fans? Supporters?
Yeah.
I don't know what, amateur investigators.
Yeah.
So the point is, when we have the ability to impact these stories, I think the level of obsession that we can be drawn into is so much more powerful, because we do feel like we are part of this community. We have a purpose. And that's so much different than reflecting on the staircase, where an injustice or a justice was done 10 years in the past. And it's fascinating to debate, but we can't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
So we're in this world now where the news cycle allows us to identify suspects, identify body locations. And that is like thrilling for audience members, but also a little scary ethically and just for law enforcement resolution for the family. So I wanted to tap into those gray areas with the circumstances here.
Yeah. What is your relationship to true crime? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you like conflicted about it?
Definitely like it. Definitely don't hate it. I found myself getting really into the boom, and I think it probably started with Serial, and then a big impact on me was the documentary The Jinx, where Robert Durst got caught on a mic admitting that he killed people, and the documentarian had to decide what to do with that confession. Give it to the police 3 minutes later, put it out to the public 6 months later. It turns out he edited the footage in some kind of manipulative way. So I'm not even sure that what we heard in that moment was exactly what was happening. Making of a Murderer, The Staircase. So my relationship was I was watching it, but what I really found was I was debating it with my friends and family and colleagues nonstop. Can you believe this happened? And not only can you believe this happened, can you believe the people making it did X, Y, and Z? And that was the jumping off point for me, where I don't think I had seen a compelling story about the people making it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might hear like the disembodied voice behind the camera, or in a really shocking reveal, a documentarian might make an appearance, or Sarah Koenig, influences an appeal or something. But what's going on in their home life? What's going on in their professional life? Are their bosses yelling at them? Are they crying themselves to sleep? Are they getting yelled at by the people that they're filming or recording? So I wanted to zero in on those people and their relationships. And I hadn't seen that in true crime. So my obsession with true crime was like, they're people that aren't explored that I'm interested in.
Other characters. Yeah. It's interesting because I do feel like the true crime boom, I think, there was lots of true crime prior to like The Jinx. It was just like Nightline or Investigation
we didn't
Discovery.
Call it a fancy title.
Right. Yeah. It like became prestigious.
Cops is technically true crime.
Yeah. So it became, HBO, not Investigation Discovery. Mm-hmm. But I actually wrote an article in 2015 that was about Making a Murderer and The Jinx, and like, what does it mean for true crime to like become prestigious? But I think something that you are identifying, at least that you just said just now, is like, we become more aware of how it's made, in the sense of we identify that there's these directors, these creators, and they become characters too, in a way.
Yeah. And I think you can call me an idiot for not thinking about this sooner, but the thing that really helped inspire this was that the people on the other end are real people.
Yeah.
With tragedies and problems. And are they being exploited by, let's call it Hollywood, or the people are they being exploited? Are they benefiting at all from this? And can you tie together real life tragedy with entertainment? And to make it even kind of more academic sounding, like, is it acceptable to bring a profit motive to people's real life tragedies?
Yeah.
Because when that happens, you have the producers being like, I need to come up with a great twist for episode 1, a cliffhanger. I need a great thing for the end of my commercial. I need a great poster. And they're doing that because they want to be promoted. They want more viewers. They want more ad sales, right? Mm-hmm. Those are all normal things for storytellers to be worried about, except when you're dealing with real people, often in the worst moments of their life. is manipulating their story to get more viewers. Is that acceptable or not? So when I started thinking more about like the real people on the back end of this, that was something I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Wait, I just had something that I was gonna tie back to that. But yeah, it's a interesting question though, because it's like there's the people who want to make a profit, right? And then there's like the Reddit sleuths, and what is there a hierarchy there, like of morality,
of guilt or something?
Yeah, or
think,
the TikToks
yes.
sleuths, like, because those people are, kind of maybe engaging in a little bit of mob mentality or conspiratorial thinking, which I think is in some way engendered by the platforms that we are using, the technology itself, whether it's the anonymity of Reddit or the sort of addictive nature of TikTok. But then you have the machine, which is like the Hollywood machine. There's like a difference in these like media makers, right?
And I appreciate the challenge of trying to list the hierarchy of kind of who's to blame for the seediness of this genre. And I think the short answer is everyone's to blame. But the one group that I hadn't seen a lot of spotlight put on was the audience. And I'll be the first person to say I'm part of the audience, right? And I assume many people here and who read the book. But the audience is begging for this stuff, and there's a demand. So when a demand is built up, someone is going to supply it. So in the book, I am challenging people to look at their own culpability in being part of this machine. Now, I feel a little bit like a jerk because I'm asking people to look at themselves in the mirror as they're enjoying something that I've made for them. That's hypocritical for sure. So I'll be the first in line to be like, I am a hypocrite who like enjoys true crime, is writing in the genre of true crime. But I think all of us owe it to the real people in these events, and not in the book, just in real true crime events, to consider, okay, someone is suffering for my enjoyment, and maybe there's also a worthy reason why this thing is being made, but let me just pay lip service is the wrong word because that's pejorative, but let me acknowledge that something real happened here.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to hog all the questions. Barry.
You were talking earlier about people wanting to feel part of the community and be involved in the case. When I watch like Eyewitness News a few minutes a night, there's always legal crime, and I see the family members being interviewed, I kind of think, would I really want to do that? This should happen to me. So I think there's a reciprocity between all these parties, and even the victims are looking for some kind of connection.
I think
people outside themselves, because otherwise, why would you go on TV and like? There's no way I would want to do that, but people do it every night. So they must be searching also. I
think that's a great point. I've always thought about the people who are the fans who are searching for connection. I never thought about it from the perspective of the victims who want to be seen, right? Even if it's 15 minutes. Right. Now, what I tried to do to make it more complicated in the book is it's not just that the people going through this tragedy want to feel seen and have their pain experienced. They're also getting paid to participate in this docuseries, which changes the calculation of other people's judgment on them. If they weren't being paid to participate, I think we would all just, oh, okay, they're trying to connect, they're trying to get help from the outside world, but they're also getting a new wing of their house or a new car. Like, that's when it's murky for those people to participate in it. So I tried to make it as complicated as possible. Tragedy, yeah, capitalism on tragedy.
Right.
I have a question about the 26 POVs of it all, which
Sure.
sounds daunting to like. So I'm just curious about what that experience was like to keep track of everyone's voice and like what people might be revealing or saying at different points. Like logistically, that sounds kind of like a nightmare. But
yeah, no, it was a kind of fun nightmare. I think as much as I said I was in love with the format when I started, I very quickly put it aside and figured out the entire arc of the book without remembering that's the format I was going to use. So it's just, this is still a story A to Z. Here are the main characters. Here are the side characters. And I wasn't worried about like who's going to chime in where. And then every time I was ready to outline a chapter, once I had things figured out, that was the scary moment of going, okay, I've got these 26 people on my wall with Post-its and I have their name and like what their, their personality. Who is useful for this chapter? And it ended up being relatively easy once I engaged with, this is a chapter about X. I know that her friends need to speak in it, her teachers need to speak in it, and it was a great moment for the bus driver to speak in it. And it didn't feel like it was difficult to identify what was useful. And then that chapter would end and I would kind of start from scratch, but it was so obvious at the beginning who you needed. And then as to the voices, I had that old kind of screenwriting teacher in my head saying, you should be able to cover the name of the character and know who's talking. That seemed ridiculous for this, and just kind of a little behind the scenes publishing world. I had to fight really hard if anyone wants to open a book to put the name and their job title and relationship every single time. And I had seen other books that would just have someone's name. And maybe that was because like the book was about celebrities. So it's about CAA. So you know who Angelina Jolie is every time. But doing that was me helping the reader keep track of everything. And so I didn't feel as much of a burden of like, I have to have them talking in a vernacular or certain vocab words just to keep track. But I was challenged to make their voices different. Frankly, I'm not proud of how successful I was in that. I think by the end of the book, I had almost lost track and things are blending together in my head. But I remember starting out being like, every character's got to talk different, and then just get overwhelmed, and it was forgetting to do it by the middle.
Yeah.
Sort of following up on that, having heard authors of oral histories talk, they often sort of mention that they found someone that they trusted to be sort of their guide, or someone that they ended up liking more, and just they would always offset it with someone else's perspective, but they, in their heart of hearts, sort of had someone that they trusted as the person that knew the full truth. Did that ever complicate things of like leaning into a character?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I didn't have like the beginning of that burden because I was making everyone up. But what I found is I was starting to like writing some characters more than other. And the craziest thing I found is there is a despicable character in this book that was my favorite character to write. And I did some thinking about why that was, and I felt like I was the most liberated to write that character, whereas the other characters, I was like, oh, I've been a sibling, I know what it's like to be a sibling, or I have family members, or I've seen enough cop shows to know what this cop's. But the guy who was the furthest out in left field,
was it Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce Allen Foley was the one I felt I could create from whole cloth without having any other obligations to attend to his voice. And ironically, by the end of me, not identifying with him, but enjoying him, by the time I was getting to the end of the book, I kind of picked him out of the crowd to do a very important monologue.
Yeah.
That I would have never expected in a million years I would assign to the least reliable person. But I just enjoyed so much the irony of the least reliable person coming with this important information. And I was just like so pleased that this guy existed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fun.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Any other questions? We can just have a chat, a chit chat. What true crime are you watching right now? Anything good? There's so much on Netflix.
What's on Netflix? I did The Staircase recently.
Yeah.
Mayor of Easttown is not true crime, but it feels like that.
Yeah.
I loved Mindhunter. I did that recently, even though I know that's old. Is there another season coming? Yeah.
No, only 2 seasons.
But I feel like every week I hear like a rumor that there's another season coming.
I wish.
Maybe it's
love
the actors
Mindhunter.
like trying to get hired.
Yeah.
What else is there? Remind me.
I don't know. It's interesting talking about the boom, especially. I feel like there was an article recently about documentarians sort of getting churned into the Netflix true crime machine, where they're like, okay, and 15 minutes in, you have to have this person say this, and then this, and like you have these people who are like legitimate artists, documentarians, who are like, you are telling me how you have to hit the formula.
All right. It's scary when data is programming our or editing our entertainment stuff. And on that note, I actually think that this formatting has like trickled into other things. Like we have some friends who make sports documentaries, and I feel like the dark sports documentaries are taking the true crime tropes with like the ominous footsteps walking down a hallway, or, you know, the darkened room as you set up an interview and stuff. And like, I hadn't seen that stuff until the true crime documentaries were super popular.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's one documentarian who did the Lula Rich MLM on Prime. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I did not.
It's about the multi-level marketing, like pyramid scheme, leggings.
Okay. No, but I just saw Telemarketers. Have you guys
seen? Oh, I
haven't
haven't watched it. I've heard
that
it's
is
great.
worth dabbling into. And if you get hooked on it, proceed. And if you just want to see some crazy people for 15 minutes, then
HBO. That's on 8 Max.
HBO Max on Showtime on demand.
So there was a docuseries on Prime called Lula Rich about basically a pyramid scheme. And then they did one, the same directors did one about the 19 Kids and Counting, the Duggars.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
And so it's not really crime. It's more like it's like one is like scam and the other is sort of religious trauma.
But I do kind of like the genre tilting a little more towards like fun, zany stuff, like Tinder Swindler. Is that true crime? Well, technically, yes, but it's like kind of got that Hollywood sheen on it, which I mean, I guess makes for good Netflix watching.
But it's interesting because they have the certain directorial tics, which obviously is your imprint, but it's holding, asking the question, holding on the person so that they then kind of pause and look around,
try to get up, get their water.
And it makes them sort of less trustworthy. Yes. So it's like, or the camera's really low, or certain things.
No, there's real tricks that are going around.
Yeah, it's kind of fun when you can kind of identify them, but then it also turns into this formula. It's like it used to be, oh, it's reenactments. It's like, and that's so corny. And now it's like, okay, now there are these other hallmarks of true crime, Netflix true crime, Amazon Prime true crime, that's like got a different sheen, but it's still becoming this formula.
And I think, look, we're in a golden age of true crime entertainment because it's hard to commit a crime nowadays that isn't partially caught on film, or all the text messages exist, or like if you did this in the 70s, no one was like filming their planning sessions in the 1970s. But like the telemarketing people had their little camcorder and their iPhones out all the time. So like now we can make a documentary of it because all the footage exists because it's in our pocket.
I know. I think that's why we don't have like serial killers like we did in the 70s.
It's too quick to get caught. They do one person and get caught. They
can't get their body count high enough. Sorry to be morbid, but
you're
safe space to be morbid.
And the DNA website testing. That's really crushed the industry.
Yeah, the industry of serial killing. Well, I think that's a good place to end.
I think we can end there, Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you guys. Thanks for your questions.
I'll sign a book if you have one. And thank you, Katie. We're good.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, most kind of, broadly speaking. I was a fake film major. Katie, I assume, was a real film major.
I was a film major, Connor was also a film major at Wesleyan,
I didn't get grades that were high enough to actually enter the film major, but it did inspire me to...
What was your major?
English.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
But then because Wesleyan is a crazy school, they let me write a screenplay for my English thesis. And I'd been taking so many film classes that's what I had wanted to do. So I just combined the film major I didn't get into and the English stuff and got off and running. It's better than writing like 100-page essay about Bronte.
Whatever happened to that screenplay?
It was, some people might appreciate this. It was a Western, obviously inspired by a famous Western class at Wesleyan.
Did we take Westerns together?
Probably. Okay. And it was an allegory. I thought it was the first one ever written about the war in Iraq and 9/11. So, everyone, instead of oil, there was gold. And instead of the towers coming down, there was an Indian attack. And I thought it was brilliant. And for a couple of years afterwards, I tried to use it to like become successful in Hollywood. And that never worked, and I now see why.
Okay.
It's not my best work. But
got to get the first one out.
Yeah, that's a relief that I've gotten better since then. But I would still like to see a more talented person make that movie. They don't need to use my script. More talented. So I can. I guess I don't know if as much as I love Westerns, I keep hearing Westerns are dead even when they get revitalized for a month at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's hard
no
to-
one's clamoring for it.
It's hard to revisit the creative stuff you made as a
Yeah, I'll open the script and like
22-year-old.
read a line and just be like, need another year away from this thing.
The software might not even match up.
Oh, that's absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah. I made a film for my thesis and I have a really hard time watching it.
Was it like a short movie?
Yeah, it was a short, yeah.
I'm sure the acting is not up to your standards.
Oh God, I
Yeah.
mean, the sound isn't up
Yeah,
to my
but
standards.
It's
like-
just an amateur production all around, not just your.
yeah,
end
no,
of it.
no, it's hard to watch because it's not, it's imperfect. Yeah. So now I'm a critic.
Perfect.
All right.
You know, I read LA Times today. This is new movie and Payne, Alexander Payne's new movie.
The Holdovers.
And Justin Chang just hated it.
I know, I'm mad at
And I
him.
read Ken Turan.
Oh.
He loved it. I mean, he's
I loved
retired
it.
now.
Yeah.
Saw it already?
I loved it. I reviewed it. Yeah.
Oh, you did? For what?
I write for the Tribune News Service. It's like a newspaper wire service. I'll send you my
I'll
review.
send you her review when.
On Metacritic?
Yeah, on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. The same newspaper.
I was shocked to see Justin didn't like
That
The
was bad
Holdovers.
But
Yeah.
I didn't read Turan's, but I could just tell from the first paragraph.
I love how he came out of retirement to rebut Justin.
What is like LA Times reader supposed to make out of this? Like, what do you
I think sometimes they just want to,
'Cause it's
have
Alexander
different
Payne,
voices.
to review.
Yeah, probably.
Major filmmaker.
Yeah. They couldn't run
I
a
read
total.
that on Alexander Payne.
Yeah. They couldn't run just a hit
Do
job.
Movies or TV also?
Just movies. Yeah.
But pretty savvy for someone who's not a book expert.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Well, I read a lot,
Yeah.
so
Did you review Past Lives?
I did.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
I saw it screening last night. It's still sticking with
That's a
me.
Yeah.
great movie, and the ending
I
is.
love that Greta Lee also. I discovered her on the morning show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I need to watch the morning show.
Yeah, she's fantastic. She's
Yeah.
really a star.
I've heard she's good. Yeah, she's amazing.
She's got a movie star.
She's incredible. Yeah.
talent.
Yeah.
See that movie if you haven't seen
Yeah.
Past Lives. I think we're good.
Yes. Thank you,
You guys are dismissed, or you
Yeah.
can hang out. Maybe I'll set up at,
Yeah.
at a place for two
Sign
signings,
some stuff. Oh, sorry about the water.
and maybe pause
we
the,
take these
the live
off?
stream.
I want
Thank you
brilliance
so
in
much.
I want brilliance in
In the signing, that's the problem with these live signings. There's a lot of pressure.
Oh, cool.
You write novels?
I do. Yeah. First two came out from Penna.
Oh, okay. What's your last name?
Sutton.